right, so I think we're about at time, so we'll kick things off. So thank you all for attending today's Twitter Spaces event. My name is Adam Wozni. I head up community at Overclock Labs, and I will also be your host for today's conversation. So for today's event, we're going to continue a series of events that we've been hosting, really all about the economics of Akash. However, today we're really going to zero in on the Akash token releases, which is very timely because there's a token release today. As a disclaimer, we are going to be discussing the AKT token, its governance, and of course the token release dates. So with all that being said, none of what you hear today should be taken as financial advice, so make sure you do your own research. Before we get into today's conversation, I want to introduce our guests. So first up, we have Greg Osuri, CEO of Overclock Labs. Prior to Overclock, Greg founded AngelHack, the world's largest hackathon organization with over 200,000 developers all across the globe. He started his career at IBM and later designed Kaiser Permanente's first cloud architecture. Very cool. As an expert in open source, distributed systems, and of course, blockchain development, Greg has been featured in top-tier publications such as the New York Times, CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, Forbes, TechCrunch, and Yahoo Finance, just to name a few. So welcome, Greg. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is a little off. I want to apologize for that, but overall, it's a good day.
Good. Go get some vitamin D. Get outside if you can a little bit. Sorry you're a little bit under the weather today. Next up, we have Cheng Wang, CFO of Overclock Labs. So at Overclock, Cheng leads and guides Overclock's financial operations and strategy. Previously, he served as the CFO for Workshop, a high-growth San Francisco gaming startup, and Referium, a premier blockchain startup. Cheng spent over 8 years at premier financial institutions before founding and managing his own retail businesses in New York City. His experience includes extended tenures with Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and the Royal Bank of Scotland. Prior to his work as CFO and entrepreneur, Cheng was vice president of RBS, focusing on debt and valuations. His financial expertise includes equity, debt valuation, derivative instruments, I can't even say it, and portfolio management. Welcome, Cheng. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you very much. Happy to be here. And that is the most detailed intro. It's almost like my resume in a snippet. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, I think it's good to include that just to let folks know what you've been up to. I mean, I have a lot, just saying that I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll do that offline here. So as a quick reminder for everyone, if you do have questions throughout today's conversation, feel free to make a speaker request at any moment, and I will do my best to get you in the conversation as quickly as possible. But before we kind of get to audience questions, I have some kind of kickoff questions that I'll maybe throw it over to Greg first. So for folks new to Akash, let's really jump into our time machines and go back to the drafting of the Akash white paper. So first off, how long did it take the team even to draft the Akash white paper? And secondly, how was the structure of its release schedule kind of developed?
Sure. So there are two white papers. The first one was the Akash white paper. It's essentially a technical overview of the problem, our industry, and technical brief. That was published in 2017, I believe. That took about 3 months, if I can remember. But the bigger white paper was economics, the AKT economics. That took about 4 months. And the release schedule was essentially, the two parts of release schedule. One is the overall emission schedule for AKT token that lasts about 80 years. And the second release schedule is for the Genesis allocation, which is more of an unlock schedule, right? So the overall, the Akashonomics, the design goals were to essentially, create a mechanism to bootstrap behavior, whatever behavior we wanted to see. Akash being an L1, it was very critical for us to bootstrap security, meaning a mechanism for people to stake and incentivize stakers and validators, and also extend that incentive model to maybe even incentivize, either supply or demand, right? We haven't gotten there yet, but that was the intention. So, and also you got to keep into consideration, you can't just keep, emitting tokens that, or else the token value, will not be sustainable, right? So the idea was we'll have a fixed supply of tokens, 389 million tokens, but we'll only release the 100 million first at Genesis, and the rest 289 million will be released every 6 seconds, that means every block, to folks that stake. So Akash overall is not an inflationary model, it's a fixed supply model, and that has a emission curve which is on a decay, emissions which are on a decay curve, right? So, and I think that's a fallacy. People believe that these inflation tokens are just extra tokens, but they're not. They're part of the release schedule. And since we wanted to, protect further from, protect the supply from reaching the market from the Genesis, there was an additional unlock schedule, and that unlock schedule is a bit controversial because that was dictated by one of our exchange partners that I don't want to name who they are, but they essentially dictated the release, the unlock schedule, which I was never a big fan of to begin with, and they didn't eventually end up listening. So it was designed in 2019 in a deep bear market, and we were strong armed by our exchange partner. That we didn't have osmosis, we didn't have any of the liquidity, infrastructure that most new projects have. And as sad as it looks, the exchange partner, centralized exchanges had a lot of power, and they still do to a certain degree. But so that's the outcome of the current unlock schedule.
Now, kind of maybe a quick follow-up is kind of the unlock schedule that the AKT token has. Is that kind of similar to other projects, or did we have to kind of deviate a bit more because of, like you mentioned, kind of the strong arming of the exchange partner?
So it's sort of like, well, so the AKT inflation schedule is unique to Akash, and we started the whole fixed supply inflation, fixed supply that's distributed on a decay curve, right? That's very unique to Akash, and that has been replicated with other projects in the space. Whereas the 6-month unlock schedule, I think that's atypical. That was the best practices at that time. But the landscape quickly changed in 2019 and 2020, right? So it's pretty standard for projects that came in that era. But now, if I were to redo that again, I wouldn't have a 6-month block. I would probably have a more continuous flow like what Akash has. Like what most of the new projects have, but.
Yeah, just to shade in there a little bit. And originally, when we had this first design and we first launched, it was very much something that was suggested by actually the exchange partner, as well as a few others in the space. That was kind of the precedent that we went with, and so that was the design. But to Greg's point of projects that are launching now, because the idea of having these 6-month chunks was, look, you will have this release, have the market digest it before the next release were to happen. At least in theory, that's how it functioned. However, at that particular moment in time, there wasn't really well-built DeFi apparatus to absorb these tokens. So a lot of that stuff was kind of flooding into the market, in not necessarily a very controlled. It was kind of in spurts and starts, right? So versus now, there's a lot more ways to sync and lock up tokens, right? Whether you're in Kava Lend, Kava Swap doing the Kava Surge stuff with Akash, right? Whether you're in Osmosis pools, whether you're just plain old staking the tokens, and in addition to secondary markets as far as trading the tokens, right? There's a lot more use case now than there ever was. So and what we found is more this day and age, more consistently available out there is the kind of continuous release, right? Because if you look at all the DeFi farming stuff, all of these tokens are released at the very least on a daily epoch, right? Similar to Osmosis. And others are continuous, right? So that's just kind of a legacy design feature that once you set in Genesis, you can't go back. It is what it is, and it's a set in stone.
And Akash governance, we take a very low touch approach to Akash governance, and once it's in on the blockchain, we don't ever want to change that, right? So the unlock schedule is set in stone, and and we got to be committed to integrity of that commitment.
Got it. Thank you. So I kind of want to toss it over to Cheng for kind of a follow-up question. So, questions about the Akash token releases come up, quite a bit in our different community channels, Telegram, Twitter, Discord. And now I'm sure a lot of other projects have, community members asking similar questions. But really my question for you is, why all the FUD? And for those that don't know FUD, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt around token releases in general. Why is it that community members, worry about token releases, and what can you tell the Akash community to kind of relieve some of their concerns about the Akash token release?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good question. I think the answer for that would be pretty nuanced, but I'll try to break it down in sequence as far as how I think about it, and I think ultimately a reflection of how we think about it as well. In terms of FUD, a lot of that fear and uncertainty comes from really the lack of information, partially, right? Not saying totally. For us, we've definitely put out the schedule from day one. I don't think we've had it easily accessible for something like it fell off the website at one particular point in time. So that's on our bad for, not having that directly out there and just easily accessible. It's out there, it's floating around, it's all publicly accessible information. So I think information and clarity, like knowing is half the battle, as it were, right? So I think that's part one. Part two is there are people out there who, not going to name names, leave it to other people to name names, other projects and people who literally just want to sow discontent, sow FUD just for the sake of doing so in order to prop themselves up and bring themselves up, right? So there are people who are doing that and purposely fomenting discontent in the community and sowing FUD in order to really, see potential downward pressure on us in order to bring themselves back up and bring notoriety for themselves, right? They're those bad actors, shall we say, as well. And then the other part of it is, and that's kind of one of the big causes, right? The other part of how we kind of address it from the internal side of things really is twofold. One, we try to fight disinformation as best we can, but again, that's part of the thing where it's like an entire community approach. And I definitely challenge every Akash supporter here and abroad, anywhere else who's tuning in and who might be listening to this recorded, to go out there and fight disinformation. Right, those who might be talking smack and saying this, that, or the other about the team, about the token release schedule, can go really kick rocks. Right, like one of the funniest things that I've seen people say is, "Oh, the Akash team is selling tokens because they're going to go buy their Lambos." And I got news for you. If you think we are dedicating years of our lives for a stinking Lambo, you can go just bury your head in the sand because you're just an idiot. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to change the world. We're here to build a very real product with very real use cases, solving a real problem in a very novel way, right? And you don't do that overnight, and you certainly don't do that in a damn shiny Lambo. So that kind of narrative really just grinds my gears and grates every one of my last nerves. So that's my way of just addressing that head on directly. So if you think we're in it for the short run, I got news coming to you where we're not. You look at Greg's career and Adam's career and my career, we weren't built on just kind of flashes in the pan, right? We know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about, and we're building teams in order, like yourself, Adam, right, in order to do so, to achieve that grand vision. And so in terms of specifically what we're doing to combat it, right, one is where you look at where are the releases coming from. Partially, it's coming from early on investors, right? Seed and private sale investors. And we have a really tight relationship with most of these groups and individuals. So we reach out to them preemptively this time around, and are saying, look, guys, if you're looking to potentially sell, there are OTC opportunities for you if you want to do so. The treasury, the company foundation itself will volunteer to absorb some of that back from you, so you don't have to go to market. And if you are going to market with any of those tokens, do you have a sophisticated, apparatus or mechanism to do so? So those are all conversations we've had, dozens of times at this point in time to ensure that this particular release would be nice and soft with a nothing burger. Just so happens today that the macro environment is kind of down overall, but I think thus far things are being managed quite well. And so that's specifically what we're doing on the investor side, right? And in addition to that, factually, right, we have our testnet 3 that just completed on Sunday, right? And mainnet 3 on the cusp, I think about 5 weeks away, roughly at this point in time, give or take, right? Once everything's kind of accounted for and our engineering has time to wrap their minds around it. And that kind of product momentum wasn't something that we had at the first release, unfortunately, because we just didn't have enough manpower. We couldn't make enough, I think, progress on the product development front to really generate some positive momentum and assuage public concern. But there you have it. So TLDR, as far as those who are irrational FUDders out there, go kick rocks, come see me. Number 2, we have been doing a lot behind the scenes with investors, doing what we can there. And thirdly, open market operations, we're supporting, adding active support, putting money where our mouth is to ensure that things are nice and stable to the extent possible. And then 4th, there's a lot of product momentum, currently on the coattails of our testnet 3 leading into mainnet 3.
Thanks, Cheng. To add to Cheng's point, right? So there are like the number one FUD is Akash Team 7 tokens to buy Lambos. Obviously, I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, it's being promoted by projects that are vested in seeing Akash price depreciate. There are projects. I mean, I'll call names. I mean, there's this project called Flux, right? And they're literally paying people. Like there was a proposal on their chain. They're paying people to come and FUD Akash, right? There's a lot of proof out there. And why? Because they really don't have anything else to build their narrative upon, right? It's a terrible product, and their strategy is to FUD on Akash and definitely ICP, Internet Computer, and now they're even FUDding like Ethereum. I think I don't know. The whole community is built on hate. When you have a community built on hate, when you have people getting incentivized, paid to spread their hate, you're going to see some success in the short term.
Oh, Greg, I think we lost you. I don't know if it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit at the end there, but yeah, go on. We can hear you now.
So the phone call obviously is terribly designed for Twitter. Anyway, so so there are people that are actually getting paid to FUD, and we're not going to take that low stance. And our adoption is based on our performance, and we're very, very vocal. We're very transparent about where we're doing and how we're doing. We are transparent about when things go great. We're transparent about when things are not so great. Right? And there are outsiders. There are outside, tracking tools that's not built by Overclock Labs that shows you your progress. And there's a second FUD that said something about like, oh, Akash did a marketing blitz right before they unlock, and that pumped the price. And the insider sold. Akash didn't do any more marketing than we normally do, and we haven't pumped the numbers. If you look at the Akashlytics chart, the numbers go in a very, very natural pattern. I mean, the numbers go up, numbers come down. Right now, we're down actually in terms of number of deploys that are happening on the website, and that's a separate discussion. But the point is, these are natural volatility progression. And Akash price really went up to $6. Why? Because Osmosis launched with Akash being the number one pool. And we're talking about 4,000% APR for osmosis Akash pools. Of course, that created short-term demand. We didn't ask for it. We didn't even coordinate. We didn't even know osmosis was going to launch until maybe a week before they launched. So they told us Akash is going to be the #1 pool because Sunny is a big Akash supporter, and Sunny is also, and Akash had the IBC enabled, right? Akash was the first chain to have, besides the Cosmos Hub, to have IBC enabled. So they naturally created an incentive pool using Akash, and that shot up the price. And and since there was very little liquidity, that means very little supply of Akash tokens, that resulted in a higher price, right? So there's a lot of these elements that go on, and of course, people like Flux, they leverage these points, ignoring the facts, ignoring the reality, and use this to create more FUD. So the price depression came from this FUD way more than the price way more than early investors selling. Now, the third thing is, did investors sell? Yes, they did. Not to a point that they would cause disruption. They sold a little bit to rebalance their portfolios, but overall, and we did reach out to a lot of the folks that market sold, and we did address, and we did account for that this unlock as well. So, but the sales was not anything to justify the depression that we have, and there were several other macro events that resulted in price depression overall. But yeah, so just want to set the record straight there.
Cool. Thank you for that. So for folks listening in, if you do have questions for Greg or Cheng, feel free to make a speaker request and I'll get you in as soon as I can. I have a couple more questions for you guys and then we'll open up to more audience questions. But kind of tossing it over to Greg again. So the Akash token, AKT, is a utility token that performs, a number of functions. I was hoping you could maybe dive into the utility of the token itself and what should people listening in know and understand about the utility of AKT.
Great, sure. When we designed AKT token, we had 3 core utility in mind, right? So number one, it's a resolve token, right? So resolve in the sense it's used to resolve governance proposals. People vote on Akash network changes for the Akash network using the AKT token. Each token is one vote, and it's used to reward. So Akash token, as you know, is a economy, and economies need to be bootstrapped in order to launch and also sustain themselves. Akash token is used to bootstrap the Akash economy. Number one being the security that we bootstrap using the inflation schedule. And as we evolve, we are going to be bootstrapping or subsidizing either supply or demand. And we have numerous papers out there on our Akash blog site that describes how we plan on incentivizing supply. And third, we call it reserve. So the original design of Akash was to support multi-payment settlement mechanism, and the Akash reserve in that Akash token in that model would be the reserve token, because as most of you know, the Akash core pricing mechanism depends on a reverse auction, right? So when you have an auction with multiple currencies, you don't really, that actually affects accuracy of the auction. So when you have a multi-currency system, you need a reserve currency in order to have normalized auction pricing. So Akash in that scenario becomes a reserve currency, but we have since we evolved the Akashonomics to not have a multi-settlement mechanism, but to actually have a stable mechanism. So in this new design, the Akash reserve token becomes the mint and burn token, right? So when we introduce a stable currency for settlement, you mint that stable currency by burning AKT token. Yes, so AKT token will have burning mechanism, very similar to Terra, but the stable token on Akash will not have independent liquidity. So it will depend on the AKT token for the liquidity, right? So more accurately, it behaves like the helium token, right? So, and that's very important to introduce stable payments because several of our users, number one, asked for stable payments because Akash in itself, being a reverse auction marketplace, has resource volatility. That means the price of compute differs based on demand supply, and the AKT token, the unit that's used to price this compute, also changes because depending on liquidity conditions for AKT token. So there are two volatilities that you have to combat, which gives a undesirable experience to users, right? So we want to fix that by introducing a stable model, and for that, AKT token becomes the reserve currency. And if you consider the cloud infrastructure market, cloud computing market is going to be 1.1 trillion by 2027, right? I mean, the size of that is it's just beyond anything we can comprehend. If you think about Akash token, even if you get 1% market share, which is humongous, Akash token becoming the reserve currency for this global economy, global cloud economy, is a bet that that I'm willing to make.
Cool. Thank you, Greg. So it looks like we have a couple audience questions. So I first want to toss the mic over to Zafar. Feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question for Greg and Cheng.
Yeah, hi. My name is Zafar. I'm from the UK. I've been following this project for a while. I haven't invested yet. Just seeing how it goes. I'm interested in the whole Web3 space. What initially attracted me to your project was the idea of this mini supercomputer. Now, I have seen later posts that you say that you've now put that on the back burner, so to speak. I'm just wondering if you had plans in the near future to build that device. Thanks.
So I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, Zafar. Can you repeat your question again, please?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up a lot. I can hear every other word.
You know what it is? I'm using this this pad because my phone, for some reason, doesn't allow me to speak on this Twitter space. So I've got to use this old pad. But anyway, I was going to say I've been following your project for a while.
Okay.
What initially attracted me was the idea of having this mini supercomputer.
Supermini, yes.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if you plan to, implement that plan to build that device. Yeah, that's it really. Thank you.
Right. So for context, Akash, we originally had an idea for a supercomputer that would be a provider on Akash, right? So we designed this computer essentially to have GPUs and whatnot, right? So the idea was when you have machine learning in Akash, you could use a home computer to power that machine learning at significantly lower cost than what the cloud offers, right? But the reality is we jumped the gun with that, right? We don't have GPU support on Akash. And on top of that, the demand needs to really catch up to the supply, right? So what that means is today, most of supply on Akash is data center grade compute, right? So when you have a website or when you have a mission critical application that need to respond to users, you typically, you can't really rely on a home computer. You have to rely on a data center computer. So Akash being a marketplace, there's a lot of demand for data center computer. And when you put a home computer, you're not going to earn any interest on the home computer. So that way, having a home computer doesn't make any sense. But that said, a home computer that's powerful enough can earn income on Akash when we have applications that would leverage such a computer. So machine learning would be the type of application that could leverage a home computer like Supermini. So we kind of postponed the Supermini to a few years down the line. We think the market is not ready for it. And in order for market to be ready, we need to first, number one, support GPUs, and number two, provide the software suite for users to be able to leverage those GPUs. So the plan for now is to push Supermini out to a later date when we think there's when we can for sure know there is a favorable economic climate to Supermini users, or else you're just going to have a box that's just going to sit in your house and not make any money. And we didn't want that to happen. So we had to push it out for a few years.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. And thank you for the questions, Zafar. There is a question that is noticed here pop up in Telegram, and I don't think we covered this, but just wanted you guys to cover it right away. So Stephen asked if anybody heard about the burning mechanism that will be introduced at some point. He was asking about a burning mechanism. Do we have something you want to cover that real quickly?
Yeah, I just discussed earlier. Akash will be introducing a stable coin for settlement. Right now, settlement on Akash happens over AKT, which is very volatile, which is not very friendly. But settlement will move to a stable coin. And when that happens, the way you mint the stable coin is by burning AKT, right? So the idea is you're going to essentially burn a lot of AKT because you want to exchange and the more usage and more adoption Akash gets, the more burning of the stable AKT happens, right? And I'm not sure how many people actually looked at a roadmap. We're going to have services in the near future, right? Backend services. That means we're going to have a lot more companies that are going to offer services on Akash, like services like databases and caches and load balancers and all these amazing services you are used to on a regular cloud, going to offer an Akash, and they're going to be taking stable payments. They're going to take the stable coin, right? So that way, the more the number of use cases and the more adoption for the stable coin happens within the cloud ecosystem. Again, remember, this is the first cloud-specific stable coin to be ever introduced in the market, right? So it's a very high-purpose, highly specialized stable coin that's used to pay for compute and services that'll only be minted by burning AKT. So, and that design we're finalizing. That design was inspired by Helium, so it's not something we invented. It's something we adopted from a project that we love. So there's less amount of research that needs to go into this, and we'll probably make an announcement fairly quickly as to when the stable currency will be incorporated. So you're going to see burning for AKT come very, very soon.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Stephen. So we do have another audience question from one of our regulars. Good to see you again, Punzi. Feel free to unmute yourself. And folks that don't know you, feel free to introduce yourself and ask your question for Greg and Cheng.
Hi, hello. I'm Punzi. I'm a regular. And someone made the joke that you're just like the bartender recognizes you. Is not usually a good stuff. A good.
No, that's good.
Thing.
It's good.
That's new chat levels for me. That was my intention. Definitely good, I think.
Yeah. Not really a question. I was just wondering in terms of marketing, because Supermini was in the discussion. So, my view is that this Supermini saga is actually coming from a how can I say, cyberpunk fetish, say it like that. It's not that people want it per se. I want to provide cloud computing and no, they just want a box that they feel that it's theirs and they're earning something and I'm gonna put a little bit more money into it and it's gonna make more money. I mean, theoretically you could have a box like that and inflation rewards coming from that box, and it could be some type of marketing like that to make some kind of cyberpunk fetish come alive. But yeah, maybe it's something that we can think about.
Yeah, actually, we thought about it. It's a good point you brought. I mean, it looks really good. It looks beautiful. It's it's got that Tronish cyberpunk look. I agree. There's a lot of meme value for it. Now, if I think about it, like, well, would you, it could be an NFT, right? It could be one of those like super limited editions that we can make a real life NFT, right? We actually thought about it. It's not a bad idea, right? You can actually have like make it maybe cheaper and make it maybe less powerful so that it just becomes an ornament in your house and a memorabilia that you can have, something, a piece of the cloud of some sorts, right? I mean, that's definitely a possibility in the future. I'm not going to cancel the idea out, but I know my CTO is going to hate me for this, but you know.
And actually, Punzi, I was going to mention one of our community members a few months ago was kind of sharing pictures with us. It looks like they were trying to build their own kind of version of a Supermini using Raspberry Pi. So I'm not sure where he has at in that project. I think he has a lot of projects going on, but that is something you could do. So yeah, maybe if if he's listening in, hit us up. We'd love to see where you are in that project. But
that project was actually pretty cool. Like the Raspberry Pi cloud running Akash, it's called Handy Miner. If you, I highly recommend people check it out. It's actually a fully functioning provider. It really works well. Like, I could see Akash Supermini becoming the entropy source. Like, what that means is, say you have a validator running on Akash, right? Like, say you're, I don't know, validating Juno, and you have it running on Akash on some cloud server, right? One could make that a lot more secure by having the signer live offsite in a remote capacity, maybe in your house, wherever you think you have more security. So the device that lives in your house, say Supermini, could become the entropy source, could actually sign the packets, whereas this remote server will do the heavy lifting and do the processing. Right, so that way you'll have like a hyper secure setup where you have a lot more control, and you can actually see right on the display what's happening, if the packets are being signed or what or not. Right, so there's definitely a case for maybe not as an active provider on Akash network, but maybe as a device that could assist you to be more secure on Akash network. You know what I mean? Like so. Well, there's some utility value that you can think about to have a remote computer where you have sovereignty, right? Like, for example, you can have like your data stored in the cloud, but all the encryptions and unlocking of the data can sit on this device. So that way you can have the security that you need, right? You still have control over the cloud data. A lot of cool ideas you can think about. But yes, Supermini is not dead. It's just living and waiting for its day to come back.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you, Punzi, for the question. Good to have you in here again. Cheng, you unmuted. You got something to add?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think just worthwhile reiterating kind of what Greg said. It's really about maturation of the network and the market for it, right? It's worthwhile reemphasizing that until GPU marketplace is sufficiently built out and scaled, a device, whether we call it the Supermini or the Supermaxi, whatever it is, right, it wouldn't necessarily make sense in a particular market. I think one thing we have to consistently dispel that whatever that kind of device takes shape in isn't necessarily a kind of passive income generator directly, because it's got to supply its own compute to the network. Part one. Part two, its resources have to be leased, right? And jobs have to run on it, essentially for income to be generated. So it's a very different thing, I guess, because it is a shiny looking device and it looks cool, designed well, and has numbers ticking off on it. Makes it seem like it's something that already exists in the market, but it's actually very, very different in terms of its design and its purpose, right? And it furthers the kind of the vision that we have for creating a truly decentralized web of compute, right? If you have, for example, these devices, they represent kind of servers all over the world. If you have things like this, not just like data centers and computers, but devices like these spread all around, you suddenly have an extremely distributed web of compute resources that are available, right? So that kind of feeds into our ultimate vision of where we see the market going.
Cool. So jumping back into kind of the token release schedule. So the last Genesis token release will be in March of 2023, I believe. So what happens at that moment, Cheng? What should people prepare for if they need to kind of prepare for anything at all?
I'm sorry, say it again. If they need to prepare for what was that again?
Oh, sure. So according to the Akash token release schedule, the last Genesis token release will be in March of 2023. So for folks listening in, what exactly kind of happens at that moment, and what should people prepare for if they need to even prepare for anything at all?
I don't think there's anything to really prepare for. It's similar to all prior Genesis releases, right? There's a certain number of tokens that were locked at Genesis that become unlocked. And for the record, the tranche of tokens, the last bit that's unlocking approximately a year from today, guess who are the holders of that particular tranche of tokens? Time's up. It's us, the team, the company, the foundation, right? So the tokens release schedule is designed this way to kind of as a show of strength and belief in ourselves, and that hey, look, we'll be the longest bag holders, and everyone else will have liquidity, full liquidity before we get our full liquidity, right? That's to really demonstrate the kind of the long-term oriented viewpoint that we have for the company, for Akash, right? In addition to that, this is just on-chain information, but as far as new employees, new team members that are joining Overclock Labs, all of their respective vesting schedules extend to 4 years, right? So that's just something that we're extremely cognizant of as far as putting the long-term interests of the network and the company directly and squarely in our high priority sites. And in terms of preparation, to answer your question directly, there's really nothing to prepare for. And just as far as another factual element, this particular unlock that's happening today is less than half the size of the previous unlock that happened in September. In addition to that, the number of tokens as a fraction of the total number of tokens in circulation, because of inflation rewards are remitted, prior tokens that were unlocked is a much smaller fraction again, right, this time versus last time. And then the next unlock, or the final Genesis unlock, is going to be yet again, right, an order of magnitude small. I don't know about order of magnitude small, but significantly smaller as a fraction of total tokens in circulation relative to where we are even today. So all that taking all that into consideration, it's the impact, the potential impact, really, right, of token releases are going to wane considerably over time, to the point where I wouldn't really anticipate there to be any impact at all. Quite frankly, I would be more worried about macro markets and what Putin might do next than anything else.
Well, what to prepare for is peace of mind, right?
That is
Like,
fun. That's all
mind
done.
from FUD, because people that are creating FUD, I bet they're not here in this call. I did invite them, right? I bet they're not here because they have no proof, right? It's just like frustrating. There's no proof. There's nothing that they have to back up their statements about like team dumping or not. Like, for context, I've been with Overclock Labs, the company that created Akash, for 7 years. My co-founder and I, Adam and I, we've been here for 7 years, way beyond our vesting schedules for stock and whatnot, and we're going to be here for the next 7 more years without even thinking about it, right? So, I mean, you got to remember this taking on the cloud, a $1 trillion market is not going to happen in a matter of a couple of years. It is a long endeavor, and we knew what we were getting into when we started this thing. So we're going to be here for a very, very long time, and it's like, it's fascinating how people can think that we can, we dump the tokens in the market because we want to buy a Lambo. It's just like, and I've been very vocal about it. I've been very vocal in terms of giving you the reality of like how our progression, we're not fully capable as Amazon to have the confidence to go to an Amazon customer and ask them to switch, because we don't have the capabilities nor the UX, but we have the core, which is decentralized, and we have the pricing done. Right now, the big step really is to improve our user experience while improving the capabilities that will get us to a position where we can, compete head on with these giants. And it's a long, long endeavor, and we're not going anywhere. So, yeah, after the unlock, I don't think anything changes. I think nothing changes now. Nothing changes after the unlock, right? So, that's where we stand.
Cool. Thank you, Greg. And it looks like we have another audience question. So, Sheriff, feel free to introduce yourself, unmute your microphone, and let Greg and Cheng know your question.
Hey guys, longtime supporter of Akash. One thing I was wondering, you were talking about using the stable coin or potential burn mechanism, which I think is great. I was wondering, how do you currently value the revenues generated from cloud?
Can you invite Sheriff to be a speaker?
Hey, can you guys hear him? I actually just heard Sheriff talking. You guys couldn't hear him talking?
Yeah, I can hear Sheriff. Sorry.
I can't hear Sheriff.
Hello. Let me. I'm gonna kick you out for a second, Sheriff, and then reapply to be a speaker, and we'll try again here. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna remove you, and then just make another speaker request, Sheriff, and then we'll get you back in. I'm not sure why you couldn't hear him, Greg. I heard him all right. I think Cheng did, but sometimes that's how Twitter Spaces work. So all right. So I'm gonna approve you, Sheriff.
Must be Greg's Apple iPhone or something.
All right, Sheriff. Try.
Hello.
Try. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear him, Greg?
I cannot. Let me leave and come back.
Okay, cool.
Maybe I'm out.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe this is more for Cheng anyway. Just wondering on the financial side. Obviously, Akash has current revenues through cloud leases, viewing on Akasholytics. Just curious how you value those. Understanding Akash has, been volatile in price, and obviously some leases happened when Akash was $7, some happened when Akash was $1. So where do you, see the revenue currently?
Yeah, so at least in terms of the revenue, one thing, number one, it's definitely the volatility that you point to, and in terms of the mechanism we want to build as far as a stablecoin, that's the reason for it, right? Because it's hard to plan for a resource like compute. It's like kind of paying your power bill, and one day it's like 100 units of this thing you're using, and the next day it's 200 units, next day it's 20 units. It's really hard to plan. So in that light is, this stable mechanism built on Akash, with Akash as kind of the underlying collateral, if you will, to generate the stable currency is hugely important. So that's kind of the impetus for that. In terms of how we look at and think about revenues, currently if you look at kind of workloads, as more and more workloads are running on Akash, right? And we're trying to, and having said that, there is some volatility to usage and demand, all that kind of stuff. But one thing to keep in mind in terms of kind of keeping our eyes on the long game here is we haven't done any concerted marketing to bring on workloads consistently. And with our mainnet, testnet 3 features, right, the suite of features that we have there, namely, there are 2 that are hugely important. Well, 3, what is it? Zero authorization, the persistent storage, as well as fractional UAKT. All of those will enable tons more workloads to actually effectively run on Akash. In addition to that, there's a bunch of work that has to still be done in terms of just kind of topography and composition of workloads in the network, right? Because we're not at the point, for example, now where workloads are being deployed in the most optimal composition possible to ensure maximum utilization, right, and efficiency there. So all that's to say, there are some low-hanging fruit items, right? One of which is all of the features that were tested in testnet 3 that's going to come up for mainnet 3 launch. In addition to that, the kind of composition on all the stuff, the optimization that we can do on the network and help providers do on the network will drastically increase the amount of workloads that'll run on Akash, and that'll, of course, increase the amount of revenue that can be generated on the network. One thing to note is, if you look at our graphs now, right, you can see, oh, hey, look, there are kind of inflection points where things start to tick up and reach like a new plateau and tick up from there. Then again, in a year's, in maybe 6 months time or a year's time, this part of the graph is going to look flat in comparison to the next year. I'm definitely bullish on that case, right? As far as scaling goes, with these new features coming on board, the increased velocity, our engineering team has grown. We brought on an amazing VP of engineering as well as engineering manager on the team, and we're growing the team very quickly. So our velocity and quality is going to increase as well there. So man, I'm super bullish on the kind of the product pipeline and what we can bring to bear over the next months and years, quite frankly. And of course, the knock-on effect directly to network revenue is going to show there. I can't obviously put any numbers to it at this particular point in time, but keep your eyes on it. And I'm almost certain in my own betting mind, right, as a human, to say the scaling that we see in terms of what our adoption usage now is going to look flat in comparison to what it will be in a year's time.
I think I know what the question is, but I'm going to try and complement Cheng's statement here. We haven't done no marketing. It's an understatement. So marketing, what Cheng is saying is we haven't done any growth marketing. That means, we have a product and we established our channels. We understand, our conversion rate, and we basically scale it up to a point that we can, we can use paid channels or any other cost-based channels to acquire customers. We are not there yet. Why? Because what we noticed working is when we can customize the message to a community that understands the value prop of Akash. Just saying you're cheap and decentralized doesn't really work. What that means is when we go to let's say Chia. So when you go to Chia miners and be like, it costs about 20 cents to do a Chia plot on Akash compared to 60 cents on the regular cloud. That's a message that people really understand. But in order for us to come to that 20-cent number, we have to do benchmarking, or somebody in the community has to do benchmarking. Now, the next question is, how can you do that at scale with a lot of communities, right? That's the question that we have yet to answer. Once we understand how we can replicate what works and to a point that we can actually scale, that's when we turn on the growth engine. So right now, there's a lot of learnings as to these new communities that come onto Akash. First, it was PKT miners. PKT miners, it was obvious price performance, right? And second, we had Chia miners. Chia miners got a little more quantified and be like, hey, this costs about 20 cents. And now we're able to attract a lot of Chia providers. Now we have 30 providers, right? Versus the first inflection point where we had PKT, we only had 2 providers, right? So as we're onboarding new networks, we're understanding how you can, increase awareness by be able to simply quantify a value proposition and improve user experience either through education or through product updates, right? And then establish support in those communities, right? And we keep doing this as much as and we rinse and repeat to a point where we can do this in a very short sprints, right? And the approach we're taking, because these early products, especially something like Akash, where you have a completely different behavior than what you're used to on a traditional cloud. Behavior requires you to acquire Akash tokens, requires you to self-custody them. There's no support, there's no collaboration. So there's a completely different model that people have to get trained in, right? But once people understand, once you're in it and once you see the value prop from the product, people love it. So we have a high sticky proposition. We have very low churn, right? So all these are very, very strong indicators for a hyper growth curve. But that hyper growth curve is not going to come unless we address these user experience issues, being pricing, volatility in pricing, the first touch points, the onboarding, both from a user, from a tenant standpoint, as well as the provider standpoint. All these issues has to be fixed, and they will in time, and that's why we have this massive engineering team that's working and thriving right now, right? As we get there, we're going to I think see a phenomenal growth. Now I can't give timelines, but what I can tell you is we're working very, very hard, and what I can tell you is as we work, we're going to be sharing a lot of our progress, and you've seen me doing this Twitter Spaces almost two a week, and we're going to continue in our transparency and keep sharing the progress, and at the same time ask the community for help when we need, right?
Yeah, no, thank you a lot for that. I think that sums it up for me as well. One of the reasons I love Akash is, unlike a lot of other DeFi protocols, the revenues are tied to an actual real world business, right? It's not just fees and liquidity providing that's generating revenue.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is the real goods and services. It's a real need, right? and that need turns out is going to be $1 trillion need by 2027. It is a need that's ever increasing. So we're very, you put any indicator, product progress, product market fit, to market size, and you can come up with your own thesis as to whether you want a longer or short Akash.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sheriff, for your question. So we have about 5 more minutes left. So I did want to open it up to the audience to see if there's any other final questions for you guys. If not, I can ask kind of my final question. So we did cover a lot of the unique qualities of the AKT token. What I'd like to hear from both you, Cheng and Greg, are what are some of the things maybe we haven't covered that really makes AKT a unique token in the Cosmos ecosystem and beyond?
Well, so Akash has been in the forefront of Cosmos adoption, right? So for those of you that don't know the history of Akash, we adopted Tendermint in 2017. More seriously, so in 2018. We were one of the first blockchains to implement Tendermint. And then Tendermint wasn't exactly fully stable and didn't have the modules that we have right now. So we ended up developing a lot of the modules ourselves, right? And then we were one of the first projects to implement Cosmos SDK as it stands now, right? In 2019, we moved from Tendermint to Cosmos SDK. And we are, the first chain to implement IBC, right? We were the first in lots and lots of, moments in Cosmos' history, and we are going to keep doing that, right? And we laid down the framework for the Akashonomics laid down the framework for high inflation-based decay curve, right? And that model has been adopted by Persistence and EVPN, and eventually became a standard with Osmosis and other projects, right? And and from a unique standpoint, Akash is the only viable decentralized cloud that's actually being used by people, right? This is unique not only in Cosmos but across the board. We're not another DeFi protocol, right? We're not another NFT. We've been doing what we're doing. We stayed unique to our mission and vision throughout the years, and we're not going to change or drift away from the vision that we have. And our vision is essentially, fairly large and ambitious, right? And we have a solid roadmap that drives this vision as well. So from a value proposition or from a model, we're very unique. We're not another copy, right? And everything we do in a unique way. Like how one example would be OddZ, right? OddZ we're using to bring collaboration to deployers, right? And that's a very unique way as to how we use OddZ, right? So, and that adds to the unique way how we use compute. We are the only off-chain compute platform that uses on-chain coordination, right? That's a very unique model in crypto, right? So we have our own, own industry and our model, and we're at the same time very integral to the Cosmos community as a whole. So hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Greg. So we have about 2 minutes left, but looks like there's one more audience question, so we're going to sneak it in. So Juno Jerry, feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question for Greg and Cheng.
Hey, yeah, I'm Juno Jerry, co-founder of Knots NFTs. I saw that Akash is networking with Juno, sort of providing backbone services. I probably missed some of where you were talking about how you're networking with Juno, but I was wondering, are you planning on networking with the NFT markets like Omniflix and Stargaze, and also providing backbone DeFi cloud computing to all IBC channels? Is your ultimate goal to provide that super service to all IBC connected tokens?
Yes. So Akash, Juno's website runs on Akash. Osmosis, our PC servers, API servers are run on Akash. A lot of the Stargaze validators and our PC servers run on Akash. Akash is in not only beyond that. Akash will be running validators on Thorchain, which I'm super excited to announce in a few weeks. So Akash is becoming the de facto standard to run Web3 infrastructure. And that's happening with, I think, 4 out of the top 100 blockchains now. And that's going to continue to happen, right, as we get more adoption. Additionally, there is another software package called Akash Omnibus. In fact, this Omnibus package is optimized for running nodes on Akash network, nodes in the sense full nodes and RPC servers. So I highly recommend you check it out. It's called Cosmos Omnibus. And I believe Juno was one of the first networks to use this to launch a testnet. I remember Jacob Gardigan actually like DDoSing Juno validators in the early days to test the resiliency of Juno. And we actually funded that effort to make Juno more resilient in the early days. And Cosmos Omnibus was so amazing in performance. It actually like protected against a DDoS attack, on Akash network for validators running on Akash network. So Akash is highly valuable, not only in terms of cost, but also in terms of adding that layer of protection to validators in the Cosmos ecosystem. So yes, we are very well ingrained into DeFi, and Cosmos, and for NFT marketplaces, yes, Omniflix will be running on Akash. You can ask them. They're actually building integrations right now to be able to do their video encoding, right? So they'll be running quite a bit on Akash. I think Stargaze will also run their front end on Akash. I haven't caught up with them in a while, but I do know Osmosis will be shifting the front end as well to Akash. As the move to a DAO, right? Akash is perfect for DAOs because you don't have the key man risk, right? So if you have because Akash, the deployments are controlled using a key, and that key can be controlled by it could be a multi-sig by multiple parties. So that way, everybody needs to agree in order to make changes to the website. So that adds a lot more security to the DAO itself, right? Because the website becoming the core way to communicate. So Akash is positioned to be the data services provider for DAOs and beyond. Hope that answers your question.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd love to add on to that. I know we're out of time now, but just really quickly that it's not just Tendermint and it's not just in the Cosmos ecosystem, but across crypto at large and then beyond into the real world, not real, but in terms of the non-crypto world, right? As far as use cases go. So as our product suite continues to develop, we'll be able to support more and more workloads. And this, of course, we would love to, and our initial beachhead is in our home is going to be the Cosmos ecosystem here. But the kind of the expansion and the horizon out there is definitely all of crypto and then beyond from there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg and Cheng. And thank you, Juno Jerry, for your question. And with that, we are at time. So at this time, I'm just going to do a couple quick reminders. So to learn more about the full token release schedule, just head over to the Akash Telegram channel and do a quick search for token release schedule, and you can learn all about it. If you have any questions about Akash, just head over to our blog at akash.network/blog to learn more. Next week, we do have another Twitter Spaces on Wednesday with our new VP of Engineering. That's going to be a really exciting one, Chanda. So mark that on your calendars. We'll be announcing that later today. And then as a final disclaimer, nothing you heard today from Greg or Cheng should be taken as financial advice. Do your own research. And with that, we're going to wrap things up. I want to thank Greg and Cheng so much for attending this. Thank all of our guests for listening in. Thanks, Juno Jerry and Punzi for all your great questions. I want everyone to have a great weekend, and we're going to wrap it up. See you guys in the metaverse. Thanks, guys.
So much.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thank you.